Okay, folks, so the Liberation Day is here and the Tariffs Day is here. With me, the one and only Mohandas Pai, who's been on our earlier broadcasts as well on this specific subject. And Mr. Pai is one of those individuals who has a very positive view on this development, unlike many of the naysayers who believe that this will end up adversely impacting trade ties between India and the US and perhaps India and the rest of the world. Mohan, always a great pleasure speaking to you here
Thank you.
on Squirrels.in. So let me first ask you to respond to this one. Last time when I spoke to you on this specific subject of tariffs, and now that we have the numbers in front of us, your view was that this should be looked at as a positive development. Now with a 26% tariff imposed on India in a so-called discounted paradigm, do you still stick to your guns?
I still stick to my gun because it will force India to open up. Please remember, the US is the biggest market in the world. The US has become a dumping ground for Europe and for China. China has a trade surplus last year of $1 trillion. And China is a mercantilist economy where they look at the top line, not the bottom line, not about return on capital, because that seems to be alien to them. In every facet of the manufacturing, they look at increasing revenues and dumping. They destroyed the iron and steel industry in Southeast Asia. They destroyed the car industry in Southeast Asia. Now they're in Dubai and they're sending BYD selling and they're hurting the Western industries. So they have invested hugely, given subsidies and built up a huge manufacturing base, right? And that is distorting world trade. So what is President Trump doing? It's a very simple formula. You charge me 10%, I'll charge you 10%. And it's very clear because he says, we have been charging you very less, you have been charging us more, and your non-tariff barriers on my exports to your country, open up and let us be equal to everybody, which is very good for India. It's very good for India because we should use that as a lever to open up our markets to US goods and to increase our trade with America. If you look at all the tariffs, we are higher than what America charges. And I think we should make sure that our garments, our textiles get duty-free access. They give it to other LDCs like Bangladesh. We should get it. We have been hurt in the last 10 years. And for pharma and others, we charge more than what they charge us. So I think we should bring it down. They'll be good for India. And as far the world is concerned, you will notice that Israel has already brought it down to near zero for US exports. Vietnam has brought it down already to near zero for US export. Vietnam has a $100 billion trade deficit because the Chinese are shifted manufacturing to Vietnam across the border and dump in the US. So China is smart. It's a battle essentially between the three blocks: US, Europe, and China.
Let's look at the numbers for a moment, and then we come to the bigger game. Vietnam is at 46%, Thailand is at 36%, China 34%, which is on top of the 20% announced earlier. So that's 34 plus 20. Indonesia, Malaysia, even Bangladesh. If you go to any US store today in New York, you will find clothes, merchandise from Vietnam, from Indonesia, from Bangladesh. With these kind of tariff regimes now being put in place, from an Indian landscape, do we say that because we are at 26%, so therefore it should open a much bigger window of opportunity for us?
Yes, I would say yes, because we have been hurt by low tariff for LDCs imposed by the US. We've been hurt by many other non-tariff barriers for the US. Now all that will go away. See, let us understand one thing. The US lacks manufacturing capacity in many goods where we sell. Pharma, for example, generics. We are 40% of the total supply in the United States, right? We should open up for them for generics. What will they sell to us? And if they sell high-priced pharma to us based upon IP, we are okay with that because we need it anyway, because that is at the cutting edge. And if you look at garments, we should open up the market for us. We have capacity. We should open up. Bangladesh will get hurt because Bangladesh has been working on lower tariffs. And then if you look at auto, let Tesla come and sell. Why should we deprive Indians of Tesla?
No, you don't deprive Indians of Tesla. You don't deprive Indians of Tesla. But let's say the likes of Bhavish Agarwal, the likes of Ola Electric, and a whole range of domestic Indian, EV manufacturers.
We should export to the US. The US doesn't have much of two-wheeler manufacturing. We should export to the US. We should export the low-cost cars. For example, a small car industry is one of the best in the world. And India is the only country which can possibly compete with BYD in electric vehicles if we get our act together. So I think we should, if Tesla comes to India, look at the benefits. First, consumers will get a very high quality product, which is the state of the art. Second, they will buy many auto components from India and expand the market for us. And third, we could, because of a low cost and better expertise, become an export base for Tesla. Tesla will be able to export from India at a much lower cost than they do in the US. The benefits for India are very immense. The one thing that we got to guide against is, if we have a free trade agreement with America, lower the tariff substantially in most things, excluding agriculture, because agriculture is more sensitive, what we should ensure is that nobody exports to the US and then dumps back to us. For example, some of the neighboring countries like Mexico and Canada, if they lower their tariff, the Chinese could send there and then say it's come to the US and it's coming to you. We should make sure that the value addition in the US and the value addition in India should be some minimum level. That is what government of India should negotiate. And if we do a free trade agreement with one particular country, then the WTO may not apply. Remember, we are members of WTO. WTO may not apply. So I think India should work at it very closely. And the latest we hear is that India has offered to reduce tariffs substantially, but they have to fine-tune the free trade agreement for that to come into effect. Now that the tariffs have been announced, I'm sure the Indian government will move much, much faster.
But you don't think, well, let me give you a specific example. For instance, the coffee sector. For the longest time, countries like Brazil, Colombia have been appealing to the Indian government to reduce the import duties which have been imposed on their products. Now, what will prevent them from using America, much like Dubai has been used in the past to bring products into India? Do you think that kind of a triangulated phenomenon could now end up coming from America, that you send your products to America and from America you start exporting to India? What happens then to the domestic manufacturers?
No. That is why what we should do is to have local value addition norms in the free trade agreement. That is one of the key conditions, to say that, for example, the Chinese could import to India and dump in America, right? If the US has, India has less tariffs with America, right? The Chinese could do that. It could work both ways. So the key is to have local value addition norms, both for America and India, which will reduce that. See, Bhupen, what I envisage is another 2 to 3 months, you'll find a large number of countries reducing the tariffs for American good export to their countries. They will reduce it. Right. And then Trump will bring down the tariffs for everybody. He'll probably keep 10% because he wants revenues, so that everybody who exports has to pay minimum 10%. Then countries can decide whether they want the 10% for goods from America. But barring that, I think all of this will go away. And he will prevent trade distortion. But he will not reduce the tariff for China, because China has got a $400 billion trade surplus with America. EU has got about $350 billion. Mexico and Canada have got trade tariffs. So I think it's a very complex issue. We should not come to any judgments right now. I become very alarmist. We should watch and wait, see what happens. There's going to be dislocation for the next 2 or 3 months, that is for sure, because anything you send right now, you have to pay the tariff. It's already been done. But I think in the next 2 or 3 months, things will become much clearer. But my view is this will help global trade, reduce costs overall, and make for fairer trade. And we must remember, Bhupen, we don't want the US to get hurt deeply because of high deficits. The US has got a $32 trillion debt, but they're borrowing, right? Interest cost has gone to 1.2 trillion this year. Next year, it'll be 1.5 trillion. The fiscal condition is in really bad shape. And if they go on borrowing $2 trillion for the next 5 years, it'll go to 42, 43 trillion. And that will really distort the global financial landscape in a very, very big way. So what
do you think, Mohan? Is there an opportunity, is there a scope for us to look at this tariff from a diplomatic or some other angle? Where's the quid pro quo that India can look at?
Look, let us reduce tariff for all American goods, barring let us say agriculture, which is very separate, to a level which is what the US is doing for us, are eliminated in many items, subject to local value addition. Okay? We are competitive in most of the goods. America is competitive in a few. Second thing, in agriculture, we have to reduce tariffs for American export of edible oil, because we import edible oil from Malaysia, which is screwing us very badly. And we should do it for pulses, because Canada is a pulses exporter, and we don't have good relations with Canada. They're playing games with us. So in agriculture, let us be selective and let us use that. For example, milk, we are a largest producer of milk in the world. We got to be careful. Chicken and others, we should reduce the tariff that we have, 80%, 100%, make it maybe 20, 25%. So because we don't export much to the US. Shrimps, we are in deep trouble right now. I think there is something happening on shrimps. I don't know. I got to look into the shrimps thing. We are the world's largest exporter of shrimps. Seafood is a very big exporter from India. So you've got to see. So I think it's the time for India to calibrate, sign a free trade agreement with America and get closer to the America, which is the largest market. America has been the reason for China's rise as a great economic power. We have screwed up time by treating America as something very distant instead of working with them and working and expanding trade. And then hopefully America will force the EU to reduce non-tariff barriers and open up the market. The US put up a lot of barriers there in their own market. Now, because of the auto tariffs, I think 25% tariffs on all vehicles sold from Europe, they're going to get deeply hurt. 1 in 6 jobs in Germany is in auto, and that is declining. They're going to get hurt. They have to get the act together. But they're putting up a brave front of saying, oh, we're going to retaliate. China says we're going to retaliate. What will China retaliate? If China retaliates against the US, China is going to get hurt. Global manufacturing will go up. The key is, does the world have capacity to sell to America if the Chinese imports into US stop? No. In many areas, there is no capacity. The Chinese will have to, either swallow the tariff or reduce the prices or increase prices for America. If the prices are reduced for America, consumption in America will come down. Consumption will come down. And consumption coming down will improve the trade deficit because there's overconsumption in America. I think it is too dynamic. There are too many moving parts. But the key is India should sign a free trade agreement with America, reduce tariff for American exports to India, put in value and reduction norms, and move very fast and take advantage of this big move.
All right, Mohan, always a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for joining us and turning the spotlight squarely on the tariffs regime. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.